From Television City in Hollywood, Barry Nelson.
This was the first screen adaptation of Casino Royale. The television show is called CLIMAX. It was around from 1954 to 1958. This is the third episode. Every episode was like its own television teleplay kind of thing. So the funny, interesting story behind the scenes though is that Fleming, he basically sold, like he had already written the book Casino Royale in Britain in 1953. So again, you got to realize like there's no Dr. No, there's no Blofeld, there's no like basically the zeitgeist of Bond does not exist at this point. It's literally just one novel. So he sells the rights, the viewing rights, television rights to CLIMAX to CBS for about $1,000, which in that time it's close to about $10,000 in our money. So it's a fair amount of money, but it wasn't what he made off of like doing the Eon Productions films. This movie, I'm gonna go through and kind of hit some major points about it. It stars Barry Nelson, Peter Lorre, and Linda Christian. Barry Nelson, if you guys have seen the movie The Shining, if you remember early in the movie, Jack Nicholson goes to meet with the caretaker or the head of the hotel. That's Barry Nelson at a much older age in 1980.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
I didn't even know it was that him.
Yeah.
Peter Lorre, however, he was kind of the big name in this production because Peter Lorre, I mean, he had already been a huge horror star. If you're a huge film buff, yeah, he was in Casablanca. He's been Maltese Falcon. He got his big
Arsenic Lace.
he got his big start, I believe, in M, which was a German film about a child murderer. And he's kind of like, it was like his stereotypical villain at the time. So it was no surprise that they, for their third outing in this television show, they hired Peter Lorre for this role.
Dude,
Well,
Peter
what
Lorre
was it?
stole
Which movie is it? It's a horror movie, right? Where he's like this, that he like right where
He
got
always
that
talks like
creepy
that.
ass voice. But
Yeah.
is that is that in Casablanca?
No, Johnny, no.
Is that in Casablanca? Is that in Maltese Falcon or
There's
what?
a movie called The Man Who Knew Too Much. That was a Hitchcock picture, and he made a remake. But I can't tell you which one it was. He
kind of spoofs himself in Arsenic Lace, which was kind of like a comedy with Cary Grant, and he's like this doctor guy who's also like he's partnered with this guy who looks like Frankenstein. Like that's the joke, and he's like he was a criminal. They like murdered someone, and he's like just no Johnny, I can't do it. No Johnny, he like almost like embellishes his persona in that. Like he's making fun of himself.
An owl. An owl in daytime, she can't see, like this.
And just to be clear, he plays Le Chiffre in this.
Or Le Chiffre, or whatever you want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he was really good at it.
He was great.
Him as a villain in a Bond movie, it would be great.
Yeah.
But
Like,
he
again,
didn't. He didn't invoke that weird ass voice though. He wasn't. I am Le Chiffre.
Oh,
he wasn't doing
had
that.
It at point. He had it at point.
Here's what I would.
But my point is this though. My point did he. Was that like what is his real voice? Was he invoking something a little manlier for this, or is his voice no? You know what I mean?
I think
real
that voice. I think that Charlie. I think that voice is just as much as today when we do Christopher Walken impressions. Like that's like when someone's doing an impression of Peter Lorre. That's usually where they go.
Yeah,
because it's the most over-exaggerated version of him.
But
he's from like Austria or something like that. Like he's from like the Russian German area.
Okay.
So he has sort of an accent because that's what he.
But
he
never. I don't think he always ever sounds like that.
But like when a character finds a voice and then they get typecast or they're brought in and no, we want you to do like you did in that horror movie. My question is, what's the real voice? If I pulled up an interview with him, would he be one of these? Would he be the other? Would he be creepy? Would he be Le Chiffre, or would he be none of the above?
Again, I think it's just.
I think in this he was almost like holding back his accent. I feel like in this one, like if he heard one, it more slipped out than it was intentional.
And also, this is
it.
Peter Lorre, I think, past his prime. Because, I mean, in this prime, he was in the 1930s and 1940s. This is mid-1950s. Obviously, you can tell he's overweight. He's a lot older. So by this time, and he's doing television. So by this time, he's not the big, it's almost like I'm trying to think of like a big movie star that you would see, like if Joaquin Phoenix decided to start doing television. You know what I'm saying? Like in another 10 years. Like that's kind of what it was.
This was the same year as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Dude, I was just about to say another underrated movie. It was in 20,000. Well, not underrated, just not mentioned.
Yeah.
20,000 Leagues.
Yeah.
Brilliant movie.
Well, is there a
this is the
connection
same year as
other than
that.
just the year?
No, it's just the year. It's the same year he did that. So here he was doing this random little episode of a TV series, then did a movie with Kirk Douglas.
Well, the funny thing about watching something like this is that you see how you could see at one point you could see a microphone, just because it's obviously in a studio.
I saw the big shadow one.
I took a lot of notes about this.
They're literally wheeling around these massive microphones, right? So there are times where you couldn't. There was one moment where you couldn't even hear Le Chiffre, and then all of a sudden you could. It's almost like they push the like get the microphone to his face,
So
they're following these people around.
Yeah. So let me actually give you some more insight on this episode.
Yeah, please.
Well, some of it's technical, and some of it. For one, I wanted to read this. Barry Nelson. This is from Starlogs magazine. I'm reading this off IMDb. So they went through. This is Barry Nelson talking about being Bond. Said so they went through the cut, 3 words here, a line here, a half a word here. He's actually describing they had to cut down the script because they realized it was going to go overtime. And a lot of this show, for CLIMAX, they would film it live. Another interesting fact is this show was filmed live. Another interesting thing was this show, they filmed it
entirely filmed live.
Yeah, they filmed this live. It might, and you never know, they might have filmed it like, they may have filmed it live to tape.
Okay.
But
somebody wanted to pre-tape, and they said, "Fuck it."
But they did it all live in one shot. Essentially, they took it all in one take.
That was Peter Lorre.
Well, they would have camera switches and stuff.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
But this show also they filmed the show in color, and the crazy thing about this is that this episode is lost for many, many years. This was 54. It wasn't until 81 then someone was going through their tapes, and much like Jeff, you did when we were talking about this, you thought we were talking about the Casino Royale from 1967, and you're like, no, this is the 50s television show, and someone found this 16 millimeter print of it and thought, oh, this must be the Casino Royale 60s thing, and he started playing it, and he was like, oh, what is this? And he realized it was the episode from CLIMAX, and most of the episodes have been lost. It's also note that, so when people talk about it originally was shot in color, and why don't we have a color version of it? Well, back then, when you wanted to save something on television, we didn't have tapes, we didn't have VHS, they didn't have Betamax. So what they would do is what was called kinescope. So it was literally taking a camera in front of a television screen that was film, and they would film what was on the camera, and that's how we have a lot of archival footage of old television shows. And that's why you kind of see that weird, like, you can kind of tell it's just that weird look to it, and that's also kind of prevalent in this episode.
Can you tell me if that's what, because that was, when I watch old stuff like this, I've always wondered, and tell me if what you just explained is the reason why, that you have highlights, but then when something is overly lit, it turns black.
Yeah, that could probably be part of that. Well, I mean, I think it's probably due to like filming. You're basically filming an old television screen, right? That's theater laced. So that could probably be something.
As a kid, recording your TV, the old tube TV.
Yeah,
but that weird look.
Okay, so if you look at the cards on the table while they're playing Baccarat, when you look on the table,
I noticed this jar.
Yeah, the cards are kind of covered in shadow, right? And I know, again, like watching these old teleplays, there's this, again, it's like really bright lights turn black. I don't know what, it's almost like something gets bright, and then black. And I don't know why. And is it because of this weird, or is it just the cameras? Is it just the nature of how the cameras worked?
I wasn't sure if it was an effect because the cards were super bright, but I was, for whatever reason, thinking it was some sort of visual effect where they were like, we got to insert a shot here, how do we do it? But I don't know anything about sort of visual effect technology from back then. But I definitely noticed, like, you see the two cards and just like black right around them.
Yeah. These old teleplays, though, they all do this when they're because McCurdy, how are they shot? They're not shot on film. How are they? They're immediately broadcast out. So are they?
Yeah, they're broadcast. So like, yeah, you're using what's the old television term? CCD technology, right? It's a special. Basically, it's special. One's called a microchip. It's a sensor basically that picks up light, and that's how that's how old cameras worked, basically.
Yeah,
and you would
and
usually have like a red, white, blue.
Something
I see what you're saying. I see what you're talking about, Charlie. Where it's like it's almost.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull.
And
this
go
up.
back and
I'm looking at the episode right
teleplay.
now.
Look at any teleplay, and you'll see the
Rogan.
same thing where it's I don't know what does it, but it's like highlights become black. You can have.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's not like it's a negative print or something where black is white,
No.
white is black. It's where super bright lights, like you'll see a light shine and I don't know, a flash bulb goes off and it's black.
Yeah.
It's very weird. It's almost like the chip goes, whoa, too far. That's just going to be black.
It may not have even been any of the technology that they were using in that era. It could just be its conversion to whatever format it ended up being that caused that effect.
Well, like I said before, when they do
Old school
kinescope
HDR.
is basically recording, taking a film camera. Usually it was usually like a special device that, it had a television screen attached to some kind of special camera that was already linked to it, so it looked perfect when it came out. And then they would record it onto 16 millimeter, not tape, 16 millimeter film. And then, what sometimes would happen is they would record these, and so then they could ship them to other broadcast stations that were out of their range. So then you could, NBC or ABC or whatever, they could record this, and then they would have it for, archival purposes, or they'd be like, oh, hey, you want to watch, here's CLIMAX, or here's this show that we filmed, and now you can rebroadcast it on your airwaves, miles and miles away. That you couldn't do it
back then. They didn't really have a concept of reruns at all. They didn't ever think about that.
Well, it's crazy to think that how much stuff is out there that was never recorded, and not just films that degraded over time, but stuff like this that was meant to just be a one and done, much like a theater a play or whatever, and nowadays
like
we're
pilot.
like, you didn't save it. Like we can't comprehend not recording absolutely everything.
It's like a library.
Back then, no one saved anything. Everyone would destroy stuff because they thought, "No, this is a waste of space. We don't need any more. Toss it. We're done."
Yeah.
You think about all these, like people talk about with movie props. You think about all these movie props people wish they could got. Where other people are like, "Oh, well, we're done with the movie, so just toss it." Or
getting rid of the
stuff
Shire
actually takes
burning
up
down the
physical
Shire.
space.
Coming back to the live recording, McCurdy, maybe you know better, but this was 50 minutes, so I figure it took up an hour period between each act. They did do live adverts in shows like this back when, where they'd flash to a different camera, a different stage, and they'd advertise a product in between and then switch back to camera.
Do you guys
brought to you by Dick Cheese Soap?
Do you guys know who? I don't remember if it was in our recording.
You don't use Ditchy's soap.
I don't remember if it was in this one, but do you guys remember who sponsored this episode? I don't know if they showed it or not.
I don't think.
My cut never showed it.
Chevrolet sponsored this episode.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Chevy.
Did they? Was that in what you looked up, or was that was?
Yeah, that was part of the research. No, that was on the research I looked up. Going back to talking about the episode, just a couple minor things. If you guys are familiar, you guys all should be familiar with the 2006 film to some extent. If not, if you've read the books, like Charlie has. I don't know if anybody else has read the book. But like two of the big differences in this the play is the fact that Bond is three differences I should say. Bond is American. He works for Combined Intelligence, not CIA. I don't even know if the CIA was formed at this point. And then you have Clarence Leiter instead of Felix Leiter, and he's now kind of swapped. So it's instead of being British, he's American, and vice versa.
Is Clarence supposed to be more British?
Clarence is supposed to be British. He's supposed to be
No. The name. The name is the name.
Yeah,
Clarence
I would probably
more
say
British than
because
Felix?
Clarence is a big British name, I can say.
And if you listen to if you listen, pay attention, they don't. There's a couple times he calls him James Bond, but there's other times they call him Jimmy Bond.
He calls him Jimmy. I heard him call him Jimmy, and I was like, what the fuck?
Jimmy, hi. Jimmy really got to me. I was like, what the fuck?
I mean, that was the biggest impression I got from this is like when you watch something that's supposed to be like a production that is for James Bond, you already, like, if you hear the word James Bond, you have an impression of that character right away.
Yeah.
And this is clearly established before any of that shit. So, like, he does not have the presence of the character James Bond at all, in my opinion.
And you're talking based on decades of seeing Eon movies, right?
Correct.
So but what would you think if you just saw this for the first time in the 50s? Do you actually get anything out of the character, or is he just like guy? He's just guy.
I mean that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like he's much more generic.
He definitely carried that Bond swagger early. That's something I noticed. That was like still the womanizing and
the way he jumped out of the way of those bullets and just stood perfectly behind the column. The column, like douche. That was the worst assassin in history for sure.
Like, why would you keep shooting at him?
I was impressed by the explosions in a live teleplay, though.
It's true. It's true. Nowadays, we're a little spoiled, cut to the car flipping.
I enjoyed that line afterwards, though. He says, "Oh, you're the fellow who got shot at." He's like, "No, I was the fellow who got missed."
Missed. Yeah,
I love that. That line was.
I thought that was kind of clever.
And I love the other line where, where he was like, "Well, maybe they just needed some target practice or whatever." Like, it's sort of also. I can't remember what the exact line was, but she was like, "Oh, why do you think they shot at you?" or whatever. When she's still playing that she's like actually trying to visit with him or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, man, I don't know. Maybe they just needed some. It was the same kind of like throwaway, kind of like snark that I felt like. Because so the caveat being that I just recently rewatched 2006 Casino Royale on a plane, and I was texting Charlie about it literally like 2 days ago, and then I'm just like, I feel like Daniel Craig watched this, like I felt like. Some of this was a little almost more similar to the edgier sort of Bond that was to come in that sort of soft reboot.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It'd be hilarious if he watched this and the 1967 version or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure he had to.
Hysterical.
Yeah, he probably did.
I based myself after Peter Sellers.
Because you all of that comes into play, and it's sort of funny to hear. Like McCurdy, I just love like the recapitulation of like sort of like the history around this, because it's like you imagine there's this interplay between the text and the film and TV versions that's sort of unique, where like it's a bidirectional thing, right? Like, because later you're going to talk about how Sean Connery's sort of interpretation of the Bond role then reflexively sort of drove even Ian Fleming's like picture of Bond, right?
Yeah.
Like, and here's this instance where it's like. It's just sort of neat because it's before there's any of that backwards sort of. There's none of that feedback yet. It's too early. This probably wasn't watched by hardly anyone. You tell me. But and there's one book. Like it's such a raw and sort of early version of this character, and yet so many things that I would consider as like pretty fundamental to Bond were coming through.
Yeah.
But certain things like he never said. Correct me if I'm wrong. He never once.
He
said
never says Bond, James Bond,
Jimmy Bond, right? Like,
no,
he never says that.
Yeah.
It's in the book, but he never says it in the play.
So wait,
is it in the book? I just read the book.
It is in the book.
I don't know if I.
Is it actually?
Okay. It is in the book.
But
he
it
does
wasn't
say it in the book.
But it didn't become iconic
until the movies.
Yes, 100%. So that wasn't like a thing you had to say at some point, right?
No.
So,
I'm Jim.
Coming back
Jim
to this
Bond.
Jimmy and James thing, though, they switched back and forth throughout the show, and then he was credited as James Bond at the end. And there was only a couple of times. Yeah.
He even got called Jim at one point.
Yeah, but Jimmy is it's like a nickname for
like
James.
A switchback.
Yeah.
It is.
I have any of you guys seen the TV show Episodes?
No.
No, it's a show about these two British writers who have to go to America, and they wrote like a hit television show. Thinking if they like wrote Downton, I'm gonna butcher this name, Downton Abbey, and then they came over to America, and an American producer's like, "Hey, I loved your show. I want you to produce it in America." And they come over to America, but then they run into all these issues and problems, and what's his name from who plays Joey on Friends, who actually plays himself.
Matt LeBlanc.
Matt LeBlanc plays a
that's
character
right.
in the show, and it's actually a really funny show. But this is what kind of reminds me of, is it's taking a British.
Yes.
They took a British thing, and I think, and they butchered it and they made it American, and so certain things I think get lost in this in a way where it's like, okay, you at least the game and the story's kind of there, but the Britishness is kind of gone because it's like, no, we got to make this guy American because American
can't call
audiences
trucks
isn't gonna
lorries anymore.
they're gonna
Okay,
like
okay,
this
even
guy.
before-
American football.
Before we go any further, though, could somebody run us through? McCurdy gave us the history. Could somebody run us through the overall plot before just get the overall plot and characters involved? I'm gonna throw it at Johnny.
I can't no don't I watched this piecemeal. I had to watch it in like each act kind of individually. I think somebody else should put it together.
Can I make one inclusion on something we didn't talk about, because I was going to say there's two big differences from the book and the movie. Besides the fact that they changed Leiter and Bond as far as being British and American, the other biggest change is the character of Vesper Lynd, which she doesn't. If you're familiar with the other movie, you're like, where's Vesper Lynd? Well, they obviously changed it to Valerie Mathis. Now, Mathis is another
was
character.
In the other, I know.
So Mathis
Mathis
in the
was, yeah.
book is Bond's French contact, and they kind of mash Vesper Lynd and then Mathis into this one single character who's
So
I think they're a little
now
more.
was Mathis French intelligence?
Yes.
Okay, it was French.
in 2006, yeah. But I mean, without Mathis, how
couldn't remember
is he
what
going to write
specific country
Quantum
it
of
was.
Solace?
What's that?
I'm just kidding.
We'll get to how
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get to how that ruined Mathis. But anyway, or at least
Can
not
I
ruined as
punt
much
this?
as confused it significantly.
Can I punt this one because I
punt
didn't
it.
watch it all at once, and I
Pick
feel
a-
like someone else is going to
pick
give
a victim.
cohesive.
Well, okay,
I'm-
but beforehand though, just to reiterate the characters, we have James Bond, and we have Felix
James
Leiter.
Bond.
So James Bond is traditionally British if he's not Australian or Scottish.
He's always British.
Yeah. Well, the character is always British, and then Felix Leiter is always American CIA, and Felix pops up all the time. They flipped the two. I guess to just make the story more palatable for Americans for some reason. Like they wouldn't be able
I
to.
think so.
They wouldn't.
Well, you're
The
talking
hero's
larger
British,
audience, larger audience.
Yeah.
But
50s.
but they did
I was
that
gonna say
swap.
it's
so
50s
they-
America.
Yeah, so they swapped the principal character and his ally, right? They did a nationality swap, but then they also took Mathis and the love interest and joined her into one. I'm reiterating what McCurdy said, but they completely switched around that foursome, I guess, for simplicity's sake. And then Le Chiffre is largely untouched, other than the fact that Le Chiffre means the number in French. And the funny thing is that they never mention that in 2006, but in this he does say it means the cipher. He says something like I was walking around with a passport anyway, and I was just a number anyway, so I'm Le Chiffre. But what they don't reveal is in any of these iterations is that he's a Jew from a concentration camp with a number tattooed on his wrist. And that's why he's called the number, because he was like, I was reduced to just a number, so I just took that on as my persona. And it's like all these executives are like, we're not fucking touching that with a 10-foot pole.
We're not making this bill a
Yeah.
concentration survivor.
I will add though that
1956, that shit was over just 12 years ago.
Exactly.
that
like
was so
we're not
recent.
we're not bringing up the Holocaust for this fucking
not a while. Yeah.
climax episode. But that's his background, and then he works for the Russians, and I think in the book it's like his prostitution ring is falling apart based on all this money that he'd used from the Russians, and so in his desperation he goes to get the money back. But what was interesting with this was that as it goes with having to adapt things, Bond goes in, he sits down with Clarence Leiter, not Felix Leiter, and then they do two things at one time. It's Bond says, "I'm going to teach you how to play Baccarat," and then
Baccarat. That's what I kept calling it.
Yeah, and then you're going to teach me how, or you're going to tell me why I'm here. So Bond shows up not knowing what his mission is, and Leiter shows up not knowing how to play Baccarat, and so the audience is taught all of that.
I'm also going to go ahead and be that guy and point out that the 2006 version was like, people are too stupid to know how to play Baccarat, so we're going to switch it to poker.
There's two things there, right?
Yeah.
Like the James Bond series has always followed trends. Always. That's why that's why Bond goes to space in late 70s,
79.
80s.
Yep.
That's why free running and poker shows up in Casino Royale 06, because they're always looking at what's hot. And I don't know if you guys remember, but back then in 06, 05, 06, poker was everywhere. Everybody was obsessed with poker. Mm-hmm. With this, though, I mean, that's the thing. They could have made Baccarat. They could have brought it to the masses, right? But you would have had to have an awkward scene like this where he teaches the audience. In the book, he spends a chapter talking about how the game's played, and that was the first. After watching every Bond movie my whole life, I had never. Did we lose somebody?
Yeah, we lost Scott.
Oh, I'm boring him to death. I had watched so many instances of Bond play Baccarat, and Baccarat. I always need to put the accent on it. But I never knew how it was played until I read the book, and it's more like, it's kind of like Texas Hold'em meets blackjack. It's kind of a cross between the two, and frankly, I'd love to play it.
Also, the part that was interesting to me in the 2006 version is that they play Texas Hold'em.
Yeah.
Which I feel like if you're in Montenegro, you're not playing Texas fucking Hold'em. And especially you're not going to call it Texas fucking Hold'em.
Well, some of the card games have different names in different areas. Like even when we watch this thing, I mean, Baccarat is a lot like blackjack, because the idea is to get to 9, right? Yep. So when he even talks about it to Clarence, he says that's a lot like 21.
He says 21.
He doesn't call it blackjack. Yeah. And so there's other games out there that like they don't like, and I think in Casino they don't call it Texas Hold'em, they just call it Hold'em. So
I don't even think they do that. I think they just call it poker. I don't even
call
think
it poker.
They don't think they even go
Texas Hold'em
that far,
or whatever it is. But when did Texas Hold'em become a common style of poker? Like, I don't even know when
2005.
The 1800s.
Really?
I'm
gonna assume.
Because I feel like Texas Hold'em became the way to play poker over ESPN, and like it became the most recognizable and widely.
Yes, in 2005, the producers are going, this poker stuff is huge, and we haven't made a proper Casino Royale since 1954.
Right, and I wonder if Baccarat was like that in its time. Like maybe it was the biggest
new
game.
Bond will have him playing Pokemon.
Yeah. Fuck.
Just dropped a chart.
Or have you seen that meme? Your hippos are not as famous as you claim, Mr. Bond.
Twitch plays Baccarat.
So Baccarat has like a history of being kind of a rich person's game. And
that's
the
what
version.
I feel like.
The version that's in the book, and because Charlie and I had talked about this, because I had looked up again. I wanted to do research. I wanted to find out, okay, what is Baccarat? And I hadn't read the book yet, and Charlie was explaining his version of it. But the version that I've played today is less you don't draw cards. There's not a system where you're like, hey, give me a card. It's actually like automatically. So in the basis of the game again is to get 9, right? If you say you get a 5 or a 6, you'd be like, well, maybe I can get one more card. Or if you get like a 3 or whatever, you're like, oh, I could get one more card. You would ask to get a card, or at least that's what they show in the show, and also what's in the book.
You say card.
Cut.
And they give you.
But but today's version of Baccarat, if you go to a casino table, and play Baccarat, they'll do it automatically. It's automatic that if you land on certain cards, if you land on a 6 or 7, the house will your cards will be flipped over. The only thing you're doing is just betting on the game. That's it. So they'll automatically do it.
Is it that the house plays themselves, or is it that
you play
or both your cards and the house are?
You can bet against yourself, and you can bet against the player. You can bet against the house.
So you're just watching an automated process play out.
Kind of.
That's why I think thematically poker works better for like
exactly.
the 2006 version. It works better because there's a little bit more actual personality going into playing it. It was
like what's the term?
The bleeding eye.
He uses
well, this is what it comes down to, though.
Sweezy or something. Sweezy is when he's betting against the house. Sweeby, yeah. That's
Sweevy is like you've been killed, and it almost looks like survive. I swear there's got to be some common etymology between Sweevy and survive, because it's like you've been knocked out and you have a chance to double down. Essentially, it's you just lost. You say Sweevy and you're taking the next bet. That's what I understand from the book and from this teleplay. And you also don't know. Here's the thing that's weird about what McCurdy's saying about modern Baccarat is that when you have the choice of pulling a card or not, you're playing in the same way with poker. They're always saying you're playing the man. You're playing the man in terms of, did he take a card? Oh, that means that he doesn't have a 9 or whatever, or you're looking at him and you're trying to figure out, does he have me?
You're inferring information based on your opponent's play.
Yeah, like and same like in poker. But the main thing, what it comes down to, if you're like, again with this, there had to be that awkward scene where Bond teaches Leiter how to play.
Yeah.
Where you would assume that he already knows. But with something like poker, there are so many people out there who don't know how to play poker, but they can watch Casino Royale and know in 2006 and know everything that's going on.
Well, and there's that scene where what's the last name of the girl? Goddamn it, Mathis explains to Vesper, not the game and how it works, not 2 pair beats that, but just like, basically what the real gameplay is, which is how you read your opponent's actions
and everything.
And
wait, hold on, Johnny. Strategy. Are you talking about the Casino Royale
2006?
Movie? 2006.
Yeah,
okay.
2006. Yeah.
I was gonna say though that the one thing that I loved about this teleplay is just the fact that they use Baccarat and that they explain it early on, so that when we get to the scene where the showdown, when they're playing the game against each other, I felt like, very little words are exchanged besides anything that has to do with the game. And then as they were, drawing these cards and everything, I was like kind of hooked in a weird way. I was like, okay, I know what he's doing. Oh shit, he got this. Oh no, I was kind of invested in it by that point.
So, and I would say,
I didn't know what was going on, so I felt no tension.
I had watched Act 1 like 2 days before I went and watched Act 2. So
and that's fair. That's fair.
But that's okay. That's my fault. But then I was like, what I noticed was, because then I watched 2006 Casino Royale between, was that the game was the suspense, like the cards were the suspense and the actual play, whereas in Casino Royale so many shots are they're not looking at the card, they're looking at the person, or they're looking at the chips, and it's the bet. So the fundamental game mechanic that was explained to you in Casino Royale when Mathis talks to Vesper and then Bond comes over and says, he was bluffing because it was on the river. You didn't need to know what a winning hand was. All you needed to know was the mechanics of betting.
That's true.
Well, there was a lot of parts to this game where they were, James
muscling
was
each
staring
other.
at Le Chiffre.
Yeah, there was.
I
There was
kind of
suspense in that,
appreciate
too.
Ryan's point though, of saying because like the way Mathis explains it to Vesper in the 2006 is like he's not necessarily telling her you don't have to understand the exact mechanic of how it works.
Yeah.
But he's saying these are the consequences. Here's what's at stake.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I appreciate Ryan's perspective here of saying this is a show don't tell, where they're just
No, I
allowing
actually
the
like
tension to develop
Yeah.
naturally based on just the play. Rather
They're not
than
assuming you know how to
dialogue.
play Baccarat because nobody fucking knows how to play Baccarat. And also, you know, I think it's cool. It was cool and exciting to watch the game unfold, knowing how the game worked. And I thought that was nice that they brought everyone to that common denominator. It's just interesting to think that they didn't make that decision for poker. And I think it's both, like Charlie was saying, they're banking on the fact that so many people know poker by this point. But I also think that it's like your knowledge of poker is immaterial to like your appreciation of the suspense in those moments. It was so much more about stakes and betting and how you play. This idea of playing the player was like a central theme in that. So that was interesting for me.
When I did go to Vegas with my mother and my aunt, because they visited Vegas many times in the 70s, in the older days, in the main days of the Sands and the old Strip. I've never played Baccarat and never actually watched it, but I remember my mom referencing playing it multiple times in older days. So I think it was a very popular game back in its day.
Probably a big one.
Kind of like we're saying that Texas Hold'em poker is very popular these days.
Yeah, and don't forget that Bond played Baccarat. He played it for decades in Bond movies. It was only one scene, right? It wasn't like Casino Royale where everything hinged on it, and so therefore you kind of needed to know how to play it. But Bond, every single Bond in most of the movies plays the game because it's his favorite game, right? And
if you watch his intro in Dr. No, when the camera comes in and the first time you hear Sean Connery say Bond, James Bond, if you pay attention, they're playing Baccarat. You see the shoe, you see the little spatula that lifts all the cards. It's the same game. And even in GoldenEye, they bring it back in GoldenEye. He's playing Baccarat with what's her fucking face.
Well, but they all do. Every single Bond, maybe not Lazenby, but they all play Baccarat. But I will say though that getting back to 1954. It's hilarious to see just the way entertainment evolves. You had radio, right, and then you had the theater, and then they kind of started to combine with television, right, where originally it was just one. They would just shoot plays like here's the camera, and it's just like sitting in the audience. It's just one wide shot, and they would run out the play, and then they started to refine that, but they still. For something like this in the 50s, just like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone, they felt the need to have a host who introduces the episode. In this case, he's saying, this is the shoe, and it does this, that, and the other. But it's just like, I don't know how much of The Twilight Zone you guys have seen, but every single episode is introduced by
Imagine a
Rod
world
Serling.
where you see this person in the middle of nothing.
So that it felt like Bond. It felt like James Bond fell into a Twilight Zone episode where he gets tortured by an
imagine a
old
world where James Bond's
horror
American
movie star.
I'm going to rip your
torment,
balls
you can
off,
imagine.
James.
But I kind of wish that guy. It would have been great if
If Le Chiffre was doing it with the bulging eyes
but he actually did do the ball, like hitting James
Oh,
in the
yeah.
balls, like
the next
Mads
one's going to
Mikkelsen
rip
just-
your testicles off.
Wham!
that would have been great.
I burst out laughing when James Bond let this weird yelp. He's like, "Hey!" or something like that
Yeah.
when he goes being tortured. It's like,
Now
oh my
the whole
god,
world will know that you scratched my ball.
my balls.
That's so good.
Okay, so if nobody's going to do it, I'll do it. But Nans, can I challenge you to give us an episode synopsis?
I'll do my best.
Do it.
I'm not
That's all
going
we
to do
can
a
ask.
good job. So actually, without turning this into a whole conversation, I'll mention the opening. I guess the transition between the host introducing and the actual episode starting. We go through the camera lens, which is really reminiscent of going down the barrel of the gun. I don't know if that's
I
like
had the
how
same
that
thought.
started.
No,
That's interesting.
Very similar.
But so we start with that, and Jimmy Bond shows up at the casino, I suppose, and luckily gets missed by a few shots. He just hides behind a pillar. Unlike you guys. So I guess I should preface my explanation by saying I did not find Jimmy Bond to be Bond-like in the slightest. So he hides behind a pillar.
Did he make a good first impression, though? Is there any redeeming...
I think so.
Peter Boyle, what's his name again? Barry Nelson. Is there any redeeming him, or is he just like...
Dude, personally, this actor nailed the womanizing side of it, like of Bond, of the woman-Bond, that dynamic between them. I thought that was probably the most Bond-like part of
He wore the suit very
particular
well,
film.
and that's definitely a point in his favor. He wears the suit well.
Hey, and to be fair to Barry Nelson, I think he even is quoted as saying, "I wasn't 007, I was 001.5." Like he knows he wasn't good.
Well,
he knows he wasn't good.
The first try,
Yeah.
He looked like a typical 1950s football player.
And
like
he only and again
haircut and everything.
Well,
Barry Nelson only wanted
the role.
Barry Nelson only wanted to take the role because he wanted to work with Peter Lorre. Like that's how big Peter Lorre was. They were just like, he was like, "Oh shit, you got Peter Lorre? I want to be in this thing." Like, sure.
Yeah. Peter
Anyway,
Lorre did steal this film.
So going back to Nance.
Yeah, Nance.
Yeah, so for me, he gets lucky. The shooter just sucked, I guess, and he hides behind a pillar for a few shots, and the guy gives up, I guess. So then he obviously enters the casino and approaches the table and places a bet and wins, I suppose. And it was unclear to me how Bond and Leiter were supposed to be meeting up, but it seemed like luck to me as someone that watched this one time with very little to no previous Bond knowledge. So they sit down and he's like, "Pretend like you're explaining Baccarat to me and I'll explain the job to you." And I want to know, so I took notes while I watched this. And did anyone else see the weird close-up of the match? So Leiter like lights Bond's cigarette and then like breaks it in 2 or 3 and puts it on the table, and then you see Bond's hand like fiddle with the pieces. I don't know. Do we know that they know each other before that, or is that like the tell? Like I'm Leiter, I lit your cigarette, and then I
well, normally they would do that before they sat down. Like they would, they kind of they see each other, they come up, they have their secret password or whatever. But generally, once that's established, they no longer do any secret agent stuff, because they already know they're on the same team.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so they meet up. They get a couple drinks, whiskey. So we're not at the martini or whatever the Bond drink is quite yet. Bond gets it with water, and the British guy gets it with club soda or something.
Bond had drank a lot of different drinks in the books before. It wasn't really established that he'd drink vodka martinis, but
interesting.
In Casino Royale, the book, he is British, right? This is like an American adaptation.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like Johnny said, he was, to me, like the most American. He was like, he looked like a Midwestern person who probably played football. Maybe his dad was a farmer or some crap.
A lot of corn in his diet.
Yeah, I was going to say corn.
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, boy.
So to me, he was the most American, non-James Bond person. If anyone seemed very Bond-like to me, it was Felix. Like his demeanor, the way he looked.
If Bond was
So anyway, I guess they learn about the job and the game together, and we find out. I guess it's as simple as James needs to beat Le Chiffre in the game. Le Chiffre, to me, I'm not super clear on his background. So is he a French communist with Russian ties or something?
He was KGB or something, right? Was it?
He's in the
money?
In the book, he is an agent of SMERSH, which is kind of the predecessor to Spectre. If you're a huge Bond fan, you know what Spectre is. But SMERSH was like Russia's anti-spy sects, and they were like the most in the book. They're described as like the most feared, and they go out and they basically kill anybody who's a traitor to Russia or the USSR.
It's short for SMERSH Spionum.
Yes.
Which means death to spies.
Yeah.
Is that true?
And if you've seen,
are you talking about Schmishmorshan?
Exactly. Yeah. No. Sorry, it's Schmiert Spionum. Schmiert.
But
Schmursh.
and then like Charlie said in the book, he's a refugee. He's a Jew, which they don't specifically like when you read it. They don't specifically say he was a Jew. They just say. It says he looks like, he has certain ears, therefore he must have Jewish blood. He has amnesia, so he has no idea where he came from, and somehow he's like a very tactile, he's good with money and that kind of thing, and he only had a number.
He's
so
good
again,
with numbers, so he must be a Jew.
Yeah, no, okay, all right.
Okay.
Well, no, they say that in the book
right.
they're talking about his ears. They're specifically about his features, and that's how they distinguish he must have Jewish blood.
So they're phrenologists, basically.
This is 1953, man.
Dude, it is the 50s. Yeah. Oh man.
All right,
That's funny.
okay.
So they kind of describe him like he's from Gringotts. Because it's the ears and the.
We love gold.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a good thing that they stayed off the whole Jewish thing, especially when Goldfinger came about. I'm like, oh yeah, Goldfinger, you. You love gold.
Oh my God.
That's the 50s.
Don't worry, I'll be censoring everything I say.
Only showing the part where you all laugh at it.
Okay, so
surrender your Jew gold, you fucking bitch.
at any rate, Le Chiffre's stakes are he needs to win the money or else he's in trouble, I guess. Right?
Because he's in the hole. He's already just like instead of it being he shorted a bunch of companies that he was trying to blow up, he was like he just gambled his money away.
He's gambling with Russian funds.
Yeah.
Or sorry. He's in the hole with Russian funds, so he needs to gamble heavily to get back what he lost. So
and he's like, I need to make 80 million francs. He's like, I need to make 80 million francs by the end of the night. And yeah, in the book, it's because he spent all his money on brothels, and they went under. Instead of like in the the movie where it's like the plane crashes and Bond avoids the plane from crashing, and therefore he can't get his money from if it was the insurance or whatever it was. In the book, he invested a bunch of money in houses of ill repute, and France basically had a law that basically. Said, we're no longer having brothels
so it was an investment as well.
He's like fucked because now they're like the French government is coming after him.
So it's
for
literally
all these different
legislation
places.
that does him in.
Yeah, and so then he's like, well, fuck.
Blackjack and hookers. You know what? Forget the blackjack.
So then he takes all of his money, basically all the money that he has, and again, like Charlie said, these are Russian funds. He takes all this money and he's like, I'm just going to gamble it to get my money back.
So when it comes down to the plot of 54, the book, I don't know about 67, and then 2006. When it comes to 2006, the entire first half of the movie is completely new, 100% new. Including the intro, the how he becomes a 00. That's all new to 2006. At the book and this episode of Climax are
the closest.
It's pretty accurate, other than the fact that the torture took place elsewhere. Like the whole driving off and flipping the car 10 times. That's not exactly how it happens in the book, but that car chase happens in the book. The book is very simple and straightforward. It's exactly what you would expect from the first Bond novel ever. It's very simple and straightforward. Bond shows up. His orders are this guy is this guy who works for Russia is in a tight spot. We should get our best gambler and we should send him to the casino and clear this guy out. Well, why don't we just kill him? Well, we can't kill him because they'll turn him into a martyr. So instead, let's just try to beat him at his own game, and then we'll make Russia look like fools, right? And so they sell this through, and M sends him on his way. It just like this. It just starts with Bond is at the casino, and his mission is to beat Le Chiffre, but part of Baccarat is that you don't know how much money your opponent has, because you literally just take it out and put it on the table. So you could have $1 billion in your pockets, and that's part of the strategy, is knowing just how much your opponent has. And so at one point he does think that he's completely Bond is completely wiped out, just like he is in this episode. He's completely wiped out, and then somebody's like, hey, here's money, and in the book it's this. Here's some shit. What's the after World War II? What was the the Marshall Act? He's like, here's some money from good old Marshall, right? Like literal Marshall Act funds. Here's 32 million francs or whatever. So Bond, without even having to say that he had been cleaned out, he kind of is like he was able to jump back into the game without even a hitch, right? Nobody knew that he had been wiped out. Whereas with this, I think they basically said like, he's been wiped out, and then somebody comes to the table and they're like, "Here's more money," and he's
here's 35 $1 million bills for you.
Yeah. And
it's a small stack of money for so much.
And I will say that's what's so great about the whole millions of francs. It actually kind of makes it feel relevant to today, because what they could be saying is, the whole pot is $1,500.
$1 million.
Exactly. Like that's really what they're gambling over, is like tens of thousands of dollars. Whereas
I did the conversion in today's dollars. The 87 million franc pot that Le Chiffre won is like 2.5 million.
Still a lot of money.
That's a lot.
That's still a lot of money.
I was
but what about
at the end of the
1954?
film. That's what I did. So I did. So Le Chiffre won what? 87 million francs, right? And at the beginning, Bond says 500,000 francs is equal to $1,500. I'm just pulling up my calculator.
Enhance.
I also wanted to ask this of the book readers, but it's pointed out in 2006. I'm pretty sure it's pointed out in the show as well, but
$261,000.
There's a certain irony in that, like, should Bond fail, he's basically funded terrorism with his government's money.
Yeah.
I like how quick though it all like lasted within the show.
Yeah, it's like I
lost $50 million within like 2 minutes.
Movie, that's a movie that broke my immersion quite a bit, because I'm just like, wait, like no government would actually do like that was the only thing that kind of really broke my suspension of disbelief was the idea that like the U.S. government or any government, like the British government, wouldn't risk.
When you read the book, you get a
like,
sense that they could do it.
During the height of the Cold War, that's like the last thing that they would ever do, is go in on any plan in which the Russians would get to take money from
and they in all likelihood, they would just kill the fucking guy.
Yeah.
It's like, he's Bond. He's going to be at this casino at this time. Walk in with your cane gun and shoot him in the back, or make sure he doesn't stand behind a pillar.
Poison his
5 times, Well, but that's the. I think in 2006 they don't really even address that. At one point, Bond literally is like, "I'm just gonna go kill the fucking guy," and Felix is like, "Don't do that." And I don't know why.
It's sultry.
I don't know why they don't just fucking kill the guy, right? Do they ever cover that? But even with this,
they did in 2006. They said if they were like, what's one banker? We're after his organization, and that was like, yeah.
If you just like murder this dude, we get less information, which was
wanted
also
to bring him in,
right?
That was why Felix advised Bond not to just kill him because Felix wanted to apprehend him and take him back to the U.S. government for
and I
interrogation.
believe the exact sultry words that he whispered is, "Why the lack of faith, brother?"
In the book, it is established, like Charlie said, that if they kill him, he's a martyr. But they also they do know about SMERSH, but they don't know anything other. They vaguely know anything about it. They know maybe one of their
reason not to kill him.
But they are like, we want to know more about SMERSH as well. So this is also why we don't want to kill him. But
they weren't trying to bring him in. In the show, it was like, oh, well, his own people will kill him then.
Well, and then let's go back to that plot of the show, though, because really, if you read the book and even the Casino Royale movie, it's like they took the first 2 acts of the book and then cut the third act out completely. Because the book, he plays the game, he gets wiped out, he gets back in the game, and then basically right after the game, Le Chiffre's basically after the money. He's like, well, this cocksucker comes in, takes all my money, so I'm going to get the money back. In the 2006 version, he needs to get to the code to get the money to his account. And then there's that torture scene, which surprisingly, if you don't know, that the version in the movie is actually pretty close to what's in the book. And obviously for television, they're not going to do, Bond stripped naked and
I was pretty impressed that even like for 50s, that scene they did do for torture, like showing him with the pinchers and then like off screen.
Yeah.
Even. You think normally they would have gone like outside the room, you just heard screaming from outside of a room. But the fact that they're still in there.
That would have been more effective.
Oh dear, my cuticles.
Yeah. But like, and that's the thing about obviously what they do in 2006 is they make it entertaining. But if they did it exactly as the book does it, there's nothing fun or funny about it. There's no, you're scratching my balls, to the left. There's none of that. It's just Bond getting his fucking balls knocked for over an hour to the point where he just fucking passes out, as any of us would. And you have to wonder.
God.
You have to wonder if the reason why he bangs all those women and never conceives, that we know of. He never has little Jimmy Bonds. Is it because Le Chiffre
beat the shit out of
his testicles on mission 1?
They literally popped.
The first mission. Yeah, they just and they say it's like, well, he's going to heal up fine. They have this doctor come in and say, your balls are going to be fine, sir, but like,
M gives him special enhanced balls.
Well,
you're
gonna shoot shotgun shells.
He becomes a Bond villain. They always have the weird physical deformity or whatever, and I'm
puts
steel
a
balls.
gun in his penis. He's just here. What the hell was that?
My name is
They'd be willing to show that kind of torture on 1956 television because it makes the Russians look bad.
Well, even then, they don't show any kind of violence in the episode. Like if you go back and watch it, it's all implied, and even the gunshots, it's the shot is taken from the outside of the room, and you see him pull the gun, and then they get shot.
He just slowly walks out. I couldn't tell if it was bleeding or was a flower on his shirt when he comes walking out.
Although you would think that the guy trying to murder Bond would carry at least a second magazine.
Bond himself never has a gun. He just keeps taking guns from them.
Patterson, ammunition is expensive. Also, in the 2006
in the United States, you better fucking believe it's not.
Yeah, that's true. Le Chiffre, even says, as he's talking about sometimes the simplest thing, and what's worse is the knowledge that you'll never extend your line, or whatever he says. I forget what he says.
Yeah.
But Charlie, it's almost implied that that is why he doesn't ever have to. You know what I mean?
He's like, Bond's like,
okay,
that doesn't sound that bad.
That sounds all right with me.
I fuck a lot of bitches.
I mean, I'll still get syphilis, but I don't have to pay child support.
Are you saying that I'm done with condoms? Oh, fuck yeah, Le Chiffre, yes.
Don't need a rubber.
Yes, beat those fucking balls, yes.
To the left.
To the left. Oh, you missed a piece.
Oh, my God.
I can feel the sperm. My sperm's screaming in there. Beat them.
It's as if I heard a million voices screaming, then suddenly silence.
That's fucking funny.
That's good.
But you know, it's funny. Like in the book and in the movie, you know, Le Chiffre gets killed by an agent, like of this organization of SMERSH.
Yeah.
But that's why I was saying it's like this teleplay. They just kind of cut that the third act out of everything, learning about Vesper being a traitor and all that stuff.
Like the way the episode ends, I was like, "Wait,
that's it?
Done? What?"
It's rather abrupt.
Just chill and have a drink. You don't even see Le Chiffre die. He's just laying there, still dying. You're like, "All right, I guess we're done, right?"
But that was the objective, was my understanding, right? Like they were out to kill him, but they just wanted to do it in a way that was like even more demeaning. Like I still wasn't. It was confusing to me what the hell the whole point of it, like. But it was a one-off thing, so you know they didn't have to make a bigger point.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed with the whole news article they were trying to put out that they were trying to, you know.
Oh, that's right.
Paint a. They were trying to make it, well, like the opposite, as Charlie said. You know, we can't kill him because they'll make a martyr out of him. They're also trying to destroy his image through the newspaper article publicly, so it kind of belittles the Russians in a way.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Okay, so but tell me this though. I don't know if any of y'all is a banker or works at a casino, but what both in the book and in this teleplay, when Bond says, even if I give you the check, how are you going to cash it? Le Chiffre says the same thing in both instances, which is this: I'm going to tell them that you told me I could have the money.
Out of the kindness of your heart.
What fucking person is going to hand the money over?
As a good sport, you decided to give me the check, you know.
Yeah. Sir, you're clearly not Jimmy Bond, and I know you endorsed the check as Jimmy Bond. In parentheses, you put Le Chiffre. We're not giving you the money. I mean, he might as well just go to the casino folks and just rob the casino.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, I actually do have a question on this. I mean, this goes into political territory, but you'll understand what I'm getting at. In the movie, All the President's Men, right? When they're going through and they're finding these paychecks and stuff, and they're the whole thing is like, oh, follow the money and everything, right? Yeah. The reason they're able to essentially pin it on Nixon's men, not necessarily Nixon at this point. They find a paycheck from a guy that is just paying for the campaign funds for Nixon, correct? And what they find out is basically they're taking paychecks that were supposed to go to Nixon's campaign fund, and they're being rerouted and used to pay off these other guys, right? So,
but if you and I are at a casino and you win $1 million, and then I go and say,
but if I go to a bank,
we were just taking a piss together, and he told me that he felt bad for me and that I should take the $1 million, they'd tell me to go fuck myself. If they actually gave me the $1 million,
at a casino in particular, they would definitely tell you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah, but you wouldn't cash. Why would he cash that check at the casino and not at a bank?
Casinos aren't a bank. They're not going to cash a check for you like that.
It's a check to get his money from the casino. It's not a bank check, from what I recall. I believe they took his chips and they gave him a check, and I believe he's supposed to go to the casino.
When he went to cash out his winnings, they said, I made out your winnings in a check.
I think the closest thing that a casino would accept is a bearer bond. They might accept that, but a check, definitely not.
So I think that was a bank check the casino made out to cash elsewhere.
I see. That was actually my impression, was that they use the word check, but it's actually a bearer bond. A casino would take a bearer bond. They would take that.
If it is a bearer bond, aren't bearer bonds literally just that? You bear it, it's yours.
Like the person who physically has possession of it is the person who owns it.
Yeah.
So it's like a money order.
Yeah.
It's
even less abstract than that.
If it was a bearer bond type of situation, Le Chiffre wouldn't need to explain anything. When Jimmy Bond says, "Oh, they won't believe you" or whatever, he doesn't have to explain himself. He would just say, it's a bearer bond, bro. I possess it, therefore it's mine. Instead, he says, I'll just tell them, you told me it was cool. That's what he said.
Yeah.
But
I
anyway,
get Bond on the phone right now for you. It's okay. He can tell me. It's all right.
Yeah.
See? I got a text from him.
You would be on your ass for that shit.
Yeah. Why is Mr. Bond crying? He's crying tears of joy because he won't have babies the rest of the
He gets all the poon that he wants, no consequences. Wouldn't you be crying too?
Octopussy, don't worry. Now we sound like Bill Clinton. Hey, Octopussy.
All right.
You're not going to get knocked up.
Just don't get any of that mess on your blaze.
Oh my
We'll test
God.
it later.
You said I wouldn't get pregnant. Why'd you still
Oh my god.
force a habit?
Didn't see that coming.
Force a habit.
Anyway,
Jesus
so we
Christ.
got up to I maybe in the future we'll try to get through the plot before we jump into general discussion. I
Should
don't
probably
fucking know,
start
but
with that.
yeah. But in the meantime, Nan's got us up through getting in the casino, sitting at the table with Felix, and somewhat meeting Le Chiffre. My dog's whining. I'm gonna throw her outside, but continue.
Yeah, so I guess
Suspiciously,
meeting Le
there's
Chiffre, understanding,
gunshots.
yeah, understanding what needs to happen. Somewhere in here we meet Valerie. Real quick, Ryan, do you mind McCurdy? I'm sorry, don't call you Ryan.
I'm not Mr. Patterson here. I could go with either name here.
Okay, so in the book,
Yes.
is Valerie Mathis one person or two people?
It is one person. Sorry, in the book it is two people. So you have.
So it's more like the 2006 in the book.
Sorry.
2006 is like verbatim. It's
Almost.
verbatim. The
Almost.
only it's
Except for the
it's
first
like they
half
took
of the movie.
2006 is as if they again they took the entire book and that's the second half of the film, and the first half is they just came up with shit, and they came up with great shit, but they just came up with shit.
They came up with things to set up basically what becomes the
start
second
of the
half.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so back to the book. So yeah, there is Vesper Lind is Bond's the main Bond girl in this story. In the book, she's basically she's part of British Secret Service. She's a member of Section S. She's the secretary of Section S. She's basically arm candy for Bond at this point. And Bond's pissed that they sent a woman. There's literally a scene where he yells bitch. I was telling Charlie about this. There's a scene in the book where he yells bitch, and then he yells it louder. So it sounded like Tourette's guy. He says bitch, bitch. It's in the book.
He's a man after my own heart.
So he's mad about. So there's Vesper Lind, and then you have what is Mathis's first name? Does anybody know? Because I don't remember.
It's just always Mathis.
So
I think it's just Mathis.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
never call him
Mathis.
anything other than Mathis.
Mathis is a part of. He's part of the. Mathis is a part of the French intelligence.
It's Rene.
Rene. It might be Rene Mathis.
No, it is. Yeah, Rene. I think
it is Rene.
Yeah.
But
I think the only time he says his proper name in the 2006 film is when he's dying, doesn't he? Doesn't he reference?
Spoilers.
Whoa.
Spoilers.
Whoa. So anyway, yes. So then you have Rene Mathis as a part of French intelligence. In this teleplay, they took the two characters and smashed them together. So now she's a part of French intelligence.
Okay.
She's also a traitor.
In the teleplay, we meet Valerie Mathis, and I guess her and Bond have some sort of history. They used to be lovers or in a relationship or something. They have some sort of deep history together, and she is under the control of Le Chiffre for somehow. I don't know if that's explained. Beyond that, though, I mean, so she's supposed to get information out of Bond, and Le Chiffre has tapped his room? So
we got to remember
end up in his
that
hotel
whole
room.
time she is French intelligence, so she's probably embedded deliberately. And then what makes it difficult for her to do her job is that Jimmy comes back into the picture and adds a different dynamic that Le Chiffre uses to play them, you know?
Okay.
So she was a double agent for Le Chiffre then?
Well, she was French intelligence, so she was probably embedded next to Le Chiffre to get
Right.
intelligence.
She was going to be a double agent.
I don't know what the book says, so.
So in the show, if you remember, there's the episode. There's the whole scene where they're by the fireplace, and they keep cutting back
turns up
and
the
forth.
Music, he talks to her, turns it down,
that's
and they do like a fake conversation.
Yeah, so that's in the book, but in the book he's talking to Mathis, and it's not necessarily Le Chiffre that's listening in, or Le Chiffre, but it's kind of the same thing. He's kind of explaining the situation, what is going on in the casino.
SMERSH is listening.
What?
The SMERSH.
The SMERSH.
Oh
The
God,
SMERSH.
the SMERSH.
It's SMERSH.
And
Snooki wants SMERSH.
again, the biggest thing, and I think they did this for time, was in the book. You don't know this until the end of the book, or towards the end of the book, that Vesper actually had betrayed Bond, that she actually had helped the commies, and so and you're led to believe that it's Mathis in the book. Like, so Bond thinks, oh, Mathis is the traitor, but in the book it's actually it's Vesper at the end. Same, and that's the same with the movie version, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of like took that storyline and Mathis, and they were like, well, let's just like make it obvious to the audience that, you know, she's working for the other side, but she's in love with Bond, you know. So
and that's the thing. This teleplay is the book, almost verbatim, but compressed, like you would expect. What happens is that after the teleplay, so let's say if the teleplay did keep going, like McCurdy said, if it went on for another half hour, whatever, 20 minutes, Bond and Vesper they just celebrate together, like, hey, we won out. You know, Le Chiffre is killed by SMERSH, and McCurdy's painting a nice picture of what they do, and Bond makes up his mind that he's going to marry her. And then they just have a final night together, and he goes off to his room, and then he's woken up in the morning, and this guy's like, hey, by the way, your girlfriend just fucking killed herself. And he goes next door, and she's dead, and there's a letter explaining they had this boyfriend of mine, kind of like 2006. They had this boyfriend of mine, and they were threatening to kill him if I didn't comply, and now they're probably gonna kill him. But like, I can't face breaking your heart, you know, by revealing that I've been a double agent this whole time. And the book ends on the line. He reports to M and to MI6, saying, you know, he's speaking in code, and he breaks speaking in code to say, confirmed, the bitch is dead. And it's just perfect. Like, that's
the
like,
job is done. The bitch is dead.
Fucking Bond becomes James Bond in that moment. Just like, you know, never fall in love again.
Is there not some moment in the 2006 film where he doesn't say the...
He says that in the 2006
Does he
film.
say the bitch is dead? I knew there was some moment where he
that's
basically
what
was
I
like,
just said.
Yeah.
The job's done. The bitch is dead.
That's exactly what he said, and then he like hangs up the phone and is very angry.
And then I you know, the whole Mr. White thing happens soon after that. But there's no collapsing building. There's none of that. It's just Bond sitting on a beach being like, I could marry this. And then he walks back in and she kills herself.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the teleplay then. We go into the actual game scene, which for me, again, despite the teleplay's best efforts, I didn't know how the hell Baccarat is played. So I'm just sitting there for however the scene seemed long, 5 minutes. I'm just like, I don't know what's happening, but James
Jimmy
is losing
Bond
clearly.
Explaining it did nothing for you. He taught
No.
Leiter how to play.
It worked for me.
Would it have worked
I guess
better
I
if he
wasn't paying
explained it
attention to that.
in a British accent?
I'll admit I didn't know how
Maybe.
to play Baccarat, and I didn't after I watched this either.
Drinking whiskey in a casino, it may have mattered.
Yeah. Anyway, go
There
on.
was just too much him teaching him than them talking about the job back and forth.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I thought they were just like making stuff up. But so James is loses all the money, which I guess rewinding, he has a conversation earlier with Leiter, and Leiter's just like, we're giving you the bare minimum amount of money, I guess, to do this job, which I guess makes sense for government. But so he gets a letter during the game, and it's from Valerie with 35 million more francs.
But he doesn't
I
know
don't know
the
why
time
it
is
would
from
be
Valerie.
Oh, okay. Well, doesn't it? I think I paused it
in
on
the
note.
teleplay, it was from Valerie.
Okay. The note, I think, said her name. So he's back in the game, and then he wins. And everyone, I guess, disperses, and the guy shows up and puts the cane gun to his spine. And I was wondering where the cop that was supposed to be protecting him went. Did Leiter tell the cop, protect him, but just until the game starts? After that, you're good. Because we don't see him again. And the guy with the cane gun counts up towards 10, I suppose, and James Bond just flops on the ground, and that's the end of that, I suppose.
Well, was that the same
That's
guy,
in
or
the
was
book.
it a different guy who approached whatever Leiter, British Felix Leiter, and
with the gun
said,
that was supposed to be under the coat but wasn't?
Yeah, he's like, I'm
Did you
gonna
notice
I'm gonna
that?
shoot you in 10 seconds if you don't give me the money.
That's
And
right.
then Leiter
And then the
just-
phone rings.
He just gives it to another guy, and the guy doesn't do shit.
He's like, damn
Like,
it.
he's like, damn, he called my bluff. Like,
Yeah.
Fort it again.
And that
well,
was
I can't
for me
shoot
one
him
of
now
the.
that the money's gone.
there
Well,
was
I
one
read
of
that-
more-
Yeah, you're in a casino, bro. Like, if you're worried about witnesses, you wouldn't be pointing a gun at this guy in the first place, you know?
Well, for me, that was one of the more Bond moments. So, Leiter's on the phone. The guy walks up. His gun's exposed. He covers it with his coat and then uncovers it because I guess it was live and he messed up. And Leiter hands the money to like one of the casino staff and says, "Put this at the front desk for Bond." And I thought that was like a very Bond suave, like cool, calm, collect moment. Just again, leading me to feel like Leiter was more Bond-like than Jimmy.
I don't remember if that's in the book, that is in the book, but I think for me, when I was watching it, I thought when he covers it the second, or he reveals it and he covers it, I thought it was more like he covered it up so that no one else would see it, and then he shows it to Leiter so that Leiter gets the idea, like, look, buddy, I got a gun to your head, or a gun to your heart, I should say.
I think Leiter wasn't looking at him at the time, though.
That
I could
whole
be
thing
wrong.
is only the teleplay. The cane thing,
yes,
is in the book, and it came across as kind of whatever in the teleplay because literally just everybody cleared out, right? It was like the room cleared out, but when the guy does it in the book, it's in the heat of the game. Like Bond has to decide whether or not he's gonna take the bet, like do the suivi or whatever, or maybe it's in the middle of an actual bet. And the guy comes up behind him, puts a cane to his back, and says, "I'm going to blow a hole in you if you don't lose this within 10 seconds." And Bond decides to just throw himself, like he does in the teleplay, and the guy runs off, and Felix grabs the cane and all that. But he makes a fool of himself. Everybody thinks he's hammered or something because he throws himself. But it's
Okay.
Then he gets up and they finish the game. Now, what they did then in 2006 was they said, that's kind of weird. All of that is weird. Like somebody coming up and just being like, Bond, you better lose or I'm gonna kill you. Nobody would have, knowing 2006, you wouldn't be, anybody
too
approaching
hokey
him,
to
you'd be
do.
like, this is a little weird. Instead, they poison him. And then you have that great sequence
I thought the
of him
poisoning
going
was
out.
in the book. I thought him getting poisoned
no.
was also in the book as well. It wasn't?
No. He it's just the cane thing.
I remember
was
that.
surprised
I
it
do
wasn't a
remember that.
poisoning, because that was
Yeah.
such a awesome turn of that moment. That last hand nearly killed me was still like the same, but
Such
it
a
was.
good line.
But I looked at both of those sequences with him with the gun and Mathis, or not Mathis, with Clarence Leiter, and then him getting the cane gun pointed at his back, kind of in this spy attitude of almost like remember when we were kids and like there was you see this in movies, but like there's always the bully and the person who's always getting victimized or whatever, and like the bully, like in Back to the Future, Biff like is picking on Marty or whatever, and then what's his face comes by and he's like, "What are you doing?" And then he's like, "Oh, nothing. We're friends. Everything's cool." And I always got the sense that like in this movie and like I guess it's just kind of a spy thing. Is like they don't want everybody else knowing what they're doing, right? Like they're just treating it like we're just gonna like just shrug this off, like nothing happened, just so he could get away with it. And like that's how I felt about in the teleplay. Same with like him, knocking back and escaping that way.
Yeah. So for me, it was just like a missed opportunity to pull some Bond move. But I guess if it's true to like the book or something, I guess
just
that's
drunkenly
fine.
fall backwards.
Just like
If you've seen Evil
just
Genius
flop out
on
of here, and the
Netflix,
guy's
you
like,
know that
"Oh,
cane
I guess I'll
guns
go."
Are real.
What's that?
If you've seen Evil Genius, the documentary on Netflix, cane guns are real. Somebody actually made a functional cane gun.
Well,
and
remember,
don't
a cane
forget
gun comes back
exactly.
And
world is not
the
enough.
World's not enough. Which we'll figure out if. I don't think we'll be able to control ourselves in the future with like referencing other Bond movies. Let me know what you guys think in a second. But yeah, in The World's Not Enough, Valentin Zukovsky has a fucking cane gun, which is badass. I mean, if you're gonna walk around with a cane, you might as well. I mean, it's like being Gandalf, right? Like Gandalf's always pulling all kinds of crazy shit out of his walking shtick. But that was Connery again as Gandalf. I apologize.
Which they were going to cast him as Gandalf.
It was very close to happening.
If I'm not mistaken, though, if I remember, like being in elementary school and stuff, and being at the height of Bond popularity, there would always like these books about like real life spies and shit like that. And you look through the books, I think cane guns were a real thing. I mean, it's not out of the realm of
well, like I said,
reality,
like they do make a functional like not the plot, but like that happens. That happened in real life. Somebody made a real functional cane gun.
Oh no, I know what you're referring to, but I'm saying like in history and in the realm of what Ian Fleming is doing, like it existed.
Yeah, there were lots of items that were like that's why like a lot of people talk about the gadgetry in Bond being silly, but it's like actually during the Cold War they made a lot of dumb shit like that. Like that's
they're fucking beluga whales.
Yes.
Umbrella guns, umbrella swords.
They tried to blow up Fidel Castro with an exploding cigar.
There you go.
Yeah. Do you guys think Ian Fleming got laid like mad?
He
Do you think these books are him exercising this fantasy, or are they a retelling of that guy just traveling the world, being a secret agent, and just getting it in?
Well, he based it off of somebody else that he knew. And it was an amalgam of people he knew, but he based it off of people he knew. I do think I'm trying to remember specifically, but I do think he got laid. Like, it wasn't like he was not getting laid, and these books were like,
he probably
his...
procreated.
Yeah, of course. But
unlike Bond.
But no, he was. I think he was getting laid, like, But I don't remember recalling if it was just like Bond levels of fuckery or what,
But that's the thing. He died before free love, So Fleming lived in the world of pre-sexual revolution. So was he?
That guy.
That guy. But he's out.
A lot.
and sadly, before Bond really took off, because if he was still alive once Bond took off, he'd definitely be getting plenty.
That's a yes and a no. He passed away. Like Bond, I think the first three films had already come out by that point, and Goldfinger I think was already out, and so he was already experiencing the popularity of it.
Maybe
so it wasn't like he didn't see it.
For all we know, he died while he was getting it in.
Yeah, him and Sean Connery were tag teaming.
Well, when we'll get to it, but the sad reality is the reason he passed away was some of it was due to the stress that was dealt because of dealing with a a lot of the legal issues with Thunderball, but we'll get into that much later.
Anyway, so did we get through? We got through everything.
Almost. So he flops out of the chair, and somehow ends up in Le Chiffre's room anyway for the torture scene, which, to me, another non-Bond moment. He just seemed like a bitch.
But he wasn't.
As far as I can tell, the guy was
room,
just twisting his big toe or something.
He flops out of the chair.
Some hotel room.
And then he
he's
and
like
then
looking for
panicking,
for Valerie, right?
Yeah, he runs upstairs, goes to his room, hides the check, then goes.
Yeah, he keeps running around going, "Where's Valerie? Where's Valerie?
Well,
Where's Valerie?"
He gets. Here's what's weird. This is where you can kind of see where maybe they shorten the script in the last minute, because everybody's looking for Valerie Mathis. And then so he runs up to what I think which he runs up to Bond's room, to his own room, and he gets on the phone, and that same voice from before that's like, "I told you to lose."
Yeah.
And because you didn't lose, Valerie's fucked. But then she walks in the door.
Yeah, that was weird.
She walks
like,
in the door.
She's here. All right, cool.
And he's like, he's like, "Oh, so you have her, right?" Because he now he sees her, so he's like, "This guy's full of shit." But then right after that, Le Chiffre walks in. So did they plan it? Like, who is on the other end of that?
It's
phone
like a
call?
second. So the Chief's in, like right at that moment.
Yeah, it was
too.
like they didn't need to have that phone call guy, because it probably would have been better if Bond goes back to his room. She walks in, and then she's like, "I'm sorry," and he's like, "Sorry for what?" And then in walks Le Chiffre, right? Like, she kind of sold him out or whatever.
That would make more sense.
But instead, they had this awkward phone call where the guy's like, "You need to lose the game, or I'm gonna kill her." And that's the first phone call. The second phone call is, "I told you should have lost the game, and I'm gonna kill her right now." And then Bond's like, "I'm looking at her, bruv." You know.
This is after he goes up the elevator, knocks on her door.
Yeah,
goes
he's
back
in his
down,
room.
and then runs into his room, gets that call, hides the check, and then she just shows up.
I don't know if you guys, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I thought he kind of already knew that she was working for Le Chiffre, though. Like, because that was the point of them when they're in the hotel and he's turning up the radio, because he knows he's being listened to. And she knows it and he knows it. It's almost kind of like in the movie where, he just doesn't give a fuck about secret names and code names and all this stuff, because he's like, they know what's going on.
Well, and he knew about it before, because the whole stakes of the game is, against Le Chiffre, and then he gets that call originally in the lobby before he sits down at the game, and he pulls Leiter aside and says, "Hey, watch out for the girl." And then Leiter's just a piece of shit and just doesn't pay attention to anything, apparently.
Yeah, what I thought was weird about the ending, though, and I guess this is what, Charlie, I don't know if this is what you were trying to get to, but that, that it ends there in his room, and then we cut to beginning of Act 3, and then he's in the bathtub. But I don't think we see a scene where he gets knocked in the head, unless I just wasn't looking at the screen.
Yeah, it just
doesn't
cuts
get
to
knocked in
him
the head.
on the floor.
Yeah. He just wakes up on the floor with a mark.
And I like how Mathis the entire time just has her arms tied behind her back. That's it. She can walk around. She can move all she wants. It's just like, but she acts like, "Oh, I can't move my arms."
So there's a scene in the book, and we'll talk about whether or not it is interesting because I'm reading the books for the first time. It is interesting to draw those, and I know not everybody's reading them, so we can talk about whether or not we want to keep referencing that stuff. But it is fantastic to finally be inside Bond's head, because the films are always seeing him and, oh, look, he's Mr. Suave. But reading his thoughts are great, because Bond has emotion. He won't show it, but Bond has emotion. But anyway, he the way that emotion manifests in the Casino Royale book is that when just like in Casino Royale 2006, Vesper gets kidnapped, and he's driving after Le Chiffre. It's actually Le Chiffre, driving, and he's running after them, and Bond is going, "God damn it! This is why I tell them not to send me women. Why can't they fucking just deal with their pots and pans and their baking of pies, and they gotta come in here and fuck my shit up?" And he says, "I swear to God, if it comes down to the money or this bitch, I'm gonna just fucking kill her. I'm gonna let them have her. They can fucking have her. I won that money, okay? I was a badass, and I'm not giving it up. And he's saying all this shit as he's like motoring after them. Yeah, and it's just pure Bond. It's like, it's just Bond never says that stuff in the films, right? But you know he's thinking it.
I know.
If I get this bitch back, I'm gonna fuck her silly. Gosh.
Well, there's like parallels when he takes that phone call in the lobby that you could tell he has that internal struggle where he's like, do I really care about this bitch?
Yeah.
But then he's like, fuck, I gotta care about this bitch. God damn it. But you can kind of tell like through his emotions after that phone call where he's like, watch out for her. You know, and then later on in like the bathtub scene.
Yeah. But anyway, Nan, so they're tied up, and then what was it where he's like, give me my cigarette case?
Well, that was Le Chiffre's cigarette case, which had a razor blade in it, which Leiter tells us at one point. And there's also a point in the teleplay where we really see it for like a while. It's like a couple seconds shot.
Yeah.
Where Le Chiffre at the table is like, here's my razor blade in my my cigarette case.
Which is interesting because that's something that they came up with for the teleplay. Like in the book, they just mention that he has these weapons on him, like he's a fucking.
There's one in his
like
shoe.
he's a Peaky Blinder or something.
Yeah.
But
well, he had razor blades in 3 places, right?
Yeah. So that's. They make it look though that like she's trying to open it and then she drops it. Like it looks kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Once again, all it's tied is just her arms behind her back. That is all.
They left them in the room together with this razor blade. I think I stopped paying attention because she did drop it, and then they get out somehow, I suppose.
He reaches down in the bathtub, and
someone comes in, and he gets his gun or something and shoots the lighter and the other guy. Like, Bond is out of the bathroom. She's still in there. And some guy, I guess they knocked out, is in there, and she screams, right?
Yeah.
And someone shoots him. I don't know if Bond goes back in there and shoots him or she shoots him.
So Bond says,
Okay.
could I get some water? Le Chiffre says, sure, because Le Chiffre found the check.
That's right.
He found the check behind the door number. So he's like, yeah, whatever, you can have your water. Bond fights the guy who's twice his size, right? And then Le Chiffre's like, what's happening in there? And he walks in, and Bond just fucking blows him away. Which let's be honest, Bond never just blows away the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? This is where the American Bond is truly American, where he's like, just shoot the guy in the face. Like, he just blows the guy away, and then he steps out and he says like, that was for.
That's for the.
I can't hear. I listened to it a couple times. I can't hear what he says, but he's like, you'd think he would say that was for Leiter or something, but nothing happened to Leiter?
Leiter didn't. No.
But anyway, so all in all, the interesting thing about this teleplay is that it is. I'd say it's a very good adaptation of a short and very simple novel. As far as James Bond goes, it doesn't have anything that what do you think of when you hit Bond? You get Bond, James Bond. It has a Bond girl, but you think Bond, James Bond. You think vodka martinis and Walther PPK and Aston Martins and Bollinger M64 and that's up to Moneypenny,
British
Q,
Suave.
It doesn't have any of that stuff that then come Dr. No, it's like all of that stuff gets laid out, and then not only that, but then every movie from there on has that exact same formula for 25 films, right? So I don't know if any of you even knew about this. I didn't know about this until McCurdy sent it to me, but like it's fascinating to see something in such a, you know, in its infancy like this.
A prototype, right? If you will.
Yeah.
Straight up prototype. Yeah. And
so off that note though, like if we're kind of wrapping things up, what I think is interesting is that, you know, 2 years later after this, again, this is 1954. Bond's the movie, the film version of the Bond films don't come out till 62, so they're not going to start production till like maybe 60, 61. Bond is brought. CBS comes back to Fleming and it's like, hey, well, we'd like to do a TV show, the Bond series, and he's like, oh, that'd be great, that'd be fantastic. Fleming starts writing these short story. He writes these outlines for episodes, and it was either going to be like a 13 or like a, you know, a small number of episodes but it would be like a Bond series, and almost treating like this climax episode as the pilot for this. But what ends up happening is CBS is like, we're not that excited about this idea. It's thought we were. So what they end up doing instead is they go off, they do their thing, and Fleming instead takes those outlines and actually makes one of the 14 Bond novels out of those outlines. And I believe one book is saying it's Octopussy and the Living Daylights. Another source said it was From a View to a Kill, which is a different. I think that's what. Or no, it was For Your Eyes Only. So, which are both Bond novels, but they're kind of collections of short stories. But regardless, it's just interesting to see how like this also, in its own little weird way, kind of helped create the Bond franchise, even though it was like the first thing, you know.
And did any of you guys know about this prior?
No.
Yeah.
I thought it started with Dr. No.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see the fucking hotel manager from The Shining.
Yeah,
Jimmy
that
Bond,
was
the
crazy.
American, and McCurdy, didn't they try to? Wasn't there? What was it for that TV show? They wanted to keep it as Jimmy Bond, the American.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, he is James Bond. They never say it's just Jimmy Bond. It's in the script. They do call him James Bond. If you watch the credits, they still call him James Bond. I think it's just for this. I mean, again, they wanted to Americanize.
It was still one of the most
they wanted to
off-putting
Americanize
fucking
it, so.
things I've ever
Now,
heard in
let
my
me
life.
ask you, McCurdy, was the first actual full book Dr. No, or did it start with Casino Royale?
The book order and the movie order are completely different.
I figured it was really screwed. What is the first, like, several books?
The first book
How
is
did it
Casino
go?
Royale. Casino Royale, but Charlie's reading it right now. Casino Royale, Live and Let Die, and then Moonraker, and then I think it's Dr. No, right, Charlie? Is that correct?
I
don't have the list on. You know what? Here, I'll pull the list up on hand because I can.
I think Dr. No came.
So the list order of the books.
I think Dr. No was like 5 or 6.
Casino Royale, Live and Let Die, Moonraker, Diamonds Are Forever, From Russia with Love, Dr. No, Goldfinger, For Your Eyes Only. Again, For Your Eyes Only is a collection of stories including From a View to a Kill, For Your Eyes Only, Quantum of Solace, Riscao, and the Hillenbrand Rarity, which again, they've never used that title. Thunderball, Spy Who Loved Me, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, You Only Live Twice, The Man with the Golden Gun, and then Octopussy and the Living Daylights. And then the stories in Octopussy are Octopussy, The Living Daylights, Property of a Lady, and 007 in New York. And so the book order is completely different from the movie order, but and most of the movies are not the books, but they will take elements from the movies or from the books and put them in different movies. Like Charlie and I were talking the other day. Live and Let Die has a scene where, in the book, where Bond's trudged underwater. The villain like him and the Bond girl, they're roped and they're trudged underwater and they're hitting all this coral and all this stuff and there's sharks in the water. That scene isn't in Live and Let Die the movie, but it is in For Your Eyes Only the movie. So they'll do weird things like that and move things around.
It's like Ian Fleming came up with all this stuff and they're like, well, shit, we haven't milked this portion. So even if it's just a scene, right? And they'll port it over, but it's you just FYI, if anybody else wants to join this train, it's $40 on iBooks to buy all 14. And that's
could I read that on my
got.
Kindle? Maybe I can get it from the library.
Probably.
Oh yeah, you could probably Casino
just do
Royale I was
Libby.
able to
I'll
get
just
at
get
a
it from-
bookstore. It's very
Yeah.
it's a very easy book to. The
I'll
Bond
just
books
find
are not hard
Go
to
to
find.
Barnes
I
Noble.
think they're probably I can get them on the library app. And
There's
just
this
get 'em
great
on.
website that I've seen. It's called Amazon. You should try that one out too.
I hear
Do I have to wear a mask when I go to the Amazon?
McCurdy,
Yes.
you know that's a local bookstore from here.
Yeah, Amazon, the local bookstore.
I want to make a small interlude, kind of
A little drone
past
can
part of
come
the
by and
conversation,
drop
but
it
going
off.
back to what Johnny said, to where he was like, did Daniel Craig watch these movies? I think he did, because is there not and maybe this is in the book too, but is there not a part of both torture scenes where he says, "Do you ever shut up"? Is that in the book itself? Because that was one where I was like, I had that similar thought. I bet, that sounds familiar. I think Daniel could.
Well,
but I haven't watched
and
the 2006 adaptation.
And to be
after
fair, I
watching
mean,
this one.
it wouldn't have to be. Scott, when they make movies, the actors don't make up the lines. There's people called writers.
Unless your name is Edward.
I'm being a
Norton,
smartass. I'm being a smartass, but what I'm saying is,
if anybody would have watched
Being
this,
a smartass,
that's
a fair. Yeah,
No, I mean the writers definitely watch this. Maybe
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
maybe
Definitely.
not, maybe not.
definitely, yeah. It's kind of like how watching different iterations of The Hobbit, you go, wait, is this Tolkien or did Peter Jackson watch this Bass Rankin stuff?
yeah,
Unless it's Quantum of Solace, and then Daniel Craig may have actually wrote the lines himself.
maybe.
Yeah, true.
Which he did in fact do.
Yeah, I'm gonna fuck you, silly. That was a Daniel Craig line.
Genius. He's a poet.
Yeah, I came up with that. They asked me what I was feeling, and I really wanted to fuck that redhead, so they credited me as writer on those scenes. Oh yeah. I'm gonna put it. Hole. That was my.
Oh yeah.
Line.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I wrote a series of moans. There was. I like that one.
There's different tonality.
She was a desk worker. She worked in the office. Bond. How could you do this?
Is that Powers? We'll get to Powers.
That's supposed to be hard
Anyway,
watching
so-
these old Bond movies. I'm going to keep thinking Austin Power.
Oh
the
yeah.
entire time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But to close it out, I think, McCurdy, like you said, there were some painful parts, but there was a lot of parts that drew me in where I actually started being like, all right, time's kinda passing by fairly quick now.
And it's fair. I mean, like with the card game, I think not everybody's gonna be like, oh man, I'm into this. Like Nance wasn't.
Well, I was
but
into that
it's
part
fair.
because I was trying to
Yeah,
understand
but that was
it,
a part where I was
it's
like,
going over my head.
I was like, oh shit, he got this, and I kind of knew what was going on. So,
Can I say one random aside? Did anyone play that Game Boy Advanced James Bond game? It was like a top-down. You walk around. It was like a top-down kind of Pokemon style, and all I remember is in Morocco you could play Baccarat.
what?
You could go up and they had a Game Boy black and white. I had a Game Boy black and white Game Boy Advance, and there was a James Bond mode. And the whole time we're talking about this, I'm laughing to myself because I was like, 9-year-old me had no fucking idea how to play Baccarat. But I just knew to click the buttons, and if I got whatever, and that's how you could make money to buy an upgrade or something. It was not
Which
a
Bond,
central.
which move or what game?
What was it? What was it? Modeled
Game Boy
after?
Advanced.
Yeah, it was Game Boy Advance, James Bond. What was the name of it? Was it? No.
I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. So, there's only one Bond game as far as I'm concerned, and that's motherfucking GoldenEye.
Yeah.
There's Johnny, the game that I'm looking up. There's a game just called James Bond 007 for Game Boy, and it's not necessarily an. It's doesn't say it's a Game Boy Advance game, but
no, that might be the one.
Yeah,
that's got to be it.
There's
no way
that's
that
it.
it's
Oh my god,
everything or
that's
nothing
it.
and all that.
That's totally it. And it's yes, it's top down, and it looked just like this. It looked like old school Zelda. And you walk around, and you'd have this punch. Guys, I could share my screen. This is wild. I want to see.
Are you? Is it the video by Retro Game On?
Well, I'm watching like a speed run, which no one's gonna play Baccarat.
Okay.
I don't even know how to spell Baccarat.
It's Baccarat.
Baccarat.
BACC.
Oh, Charlie, what is
Baccarat?
What does Baccarat mean, Charlie? Tell everybody what it means.
Oh, Baccarat means fuck all. It literally means nothing. So when you it's like naming blackjack bust. It means you have 0, sir.
Because every time in the game, if you watch, every time he has 2 face cards, like he says, 2 face cards and 10s are nothing, right?
That was how Le Chiffre was defeated, right? It was Bond had
Figured
Noof,
that out by the
which
end.
is 9, and then they pan over to Le Chiffre, and wow, James Bond is grabbing this chick's tits in this game. What kind of game?
I don't think this is on Game Boy Advance.
Dude, I remember this, and you had like a saber.
Wow.
There's not enough pixels for that to really occur in a Game Boy Advance.
How do I
James
share
Bond
my
is
screen?
2D tit fucking right now.
Dude, how did I have this game?
Do you guys see that?
This so
What's that?
distinctly.
I'm screen sharing. Do you see it?
Now I see it.
It's like loading up.
What?
Shit.
Grab
What's
it.
that?
Why
What
does
the
that
hell
look
is
like-
that in the corner?
It looks like Kennedy.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah, Kennedy, probably.
yeah.
fuck,
So okay, so
bitches.
yeah,
Trying to
so
find
he
the fucking Baccarat game.
he beat Bond beats Le Chiffre in this teleplay. Bond has Noof, which is 9, and Le
Fucking
Chiffre
odd job.
because Bond immediately flipped a 9. He flipped a table 9, which is like, I have 9, I'm gonna win. You don't even have a chance to pull a card. You have to flip your cards over. Le Chiffre flips his cards over. He has Baccarat, which means nothing. He has 2 face cards. He has 0. And that's when he gets up from the table and he's all pissed off and he's like, I'm
You
gonna
lose,
kill this
sir.
guy. Yeah. And so face cards are nothing. It's only aces are 1 through 9, and you're trying to get to 9. And if you go over 9, it's only the last digit that counts. So if you have 19, that's the same thing as 9, right? So
Unless you get 2 jacks or something. What was it?
well,
They put it
face
in
cards
back
are
up.
0. So if you get a queen, king, or a jack, that's 0.
But he
So
kept
if you get
pulling
2
over, like,
face
duplicate
cards, that's
face cards.
Baccarat. Yeah. So if you pull 2 face cards, if you draw a 9, that's ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, I was starting to pick it up towards the end, but I was still like,
I still have no fucking idea. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, I
it gets
think I'm getting
complicated. It gets complicated when you get a card that is not 2 face cards, but it's like, what is it? Like if you get an 8 and another 8, right? Then it's 16, but it's not 16. It's actually a 6 because you drop 10 from that. So it gets more complicated.
because you're trying to max out at 9. Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
at that
so you can't
point,
go over.
and that's the whole thing, right? If you have 2 8s, so you effectively have a 6, you probably don't want to take a card. So what that signals to the other guy is, well, he didn't take a card, so he has better than a 5. So, that's where it's all about playing the man, right?
So to take a card, you're trying to get them over 10, so they actually go back
Charlie,
to
do you
lower
want
numbers,
to
essentially.
arrange a game of Baccarat?
So I talked to Charlie
Yes.
about this today, and I said this would be the ultimate James Bond party, right? You buy
Just bring
Bollinger's. You would buy Bollinger's champagne. You would have vodka martinis. We'd have someone
Suits.
would bring a Walther PPK and we'd shoot cans outside, and yeah, then we'd
Find a
play
location.
Baccarat. Charlie's
There you
Charlie's
go.
halfway there.
There you go.
Pummel each other's
I was
nuts.
gonna say, I think all of us live in too close to suburbia just to be shooting a Walther PPK
Yeah, we
out in our decks. With
That's not
cans.
true.
Hey.
That's not true at Charlie's place.
7.65 millimeter.
Oh yeah, no, Charlie's place we could. Yeah.
yeah.
Only
Well,
three
you
men I
know,
know use such a weapon. I believe I've killed 2 of them.
Well, we go off
He's
Charlie's
shooting
dad's
geese off his
suggestion,
dad.
and we all, get on a plane and fly to Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, give me a couple months. I'll be driving back that way anyway.
You're all vaccinated, dude.
Me, not yet. I got my next dose on Friday.
My sister got
That's
vaccinated.
where your DNA changes, and that's where you're going to be talking about, transitioning, just like Bond. Anyway.
Well, I mean,
up.
it's weird. It's
Whoa.
weird. Every
Are you trying to show us your transition has started?
Actually, my dick
Ever?
fell off.
It starts while you rub your face.
Yeah. Ever since I got vaccinated, if I try to use an Apple product, my arm hurts, and all of a sudden I just want to buy something
you have
from
to buy-
Microsoft.
Don't do any more upgrades. Don't do
Apple
any
makes
more
a-
upgrades.
Stop.
You're back
Like
to
all of a
pissing
sudden I
me
have
off.
to buy
Fuck
Microsoft
off.
everything. It's
I
weird.
pissed myself after
Apple
who I
makes
am
a
for
little
2 hours.
dongle for that. You'll be all right.
Do you hear radio signals randomly, like static as you're walking,
They're just,
picking up random FM stations?
that's right. They're like, buy more Microsoft. Support Windows.
You're preaching to the fucking choir over here. Don't even get me fucking
Yeah,
started.
you master race motherfuckers. Does anybody have any final notes or anything? And Nans, I know you said you took notes on this. Does anybody have anything else about Casino Royale 1950 motherfucking 4? James Bond drama.
I'm excited to
action TV
actually
episode.
start with actual Bond and Dr. No.
Yeah,
That's my note.
Yeah.
It
But
makes you
at the same
appreciate
time,
it,
this
yeah.
was pretty great. I mean,
I'm glad I
cool
saw
thing.
this because it's
Yeah.
like I said, it's like seeing a prototype. Like it's seeing
Yeah.
Yeah.
an early version of this. Like I don't think it was a waste of time.
He's just Guy, right? Like he's not James Bond. He's not Bond James Bond. He's just a
He's
guy.
Jimmy Bond.
Yeah.
Well, he's Jimmy.
I will say the one thing where I did feel like, again, and I'll reiterate, where I felt that Bond presence. I know, and there's so many ways that it was nothing like the current Bond that we see. But he was smooth. He was quick. He was witty. And he was smooth with women. I still think that's where we kind of saw the main parallels. If I had to pull, and again, it's still not like near current Bond, but I still think he was smooth, witty,
I'm going to put it
Good
this way.
quips.
I'll talk in the future about how I classify all of the Eon Bonds, right? The way that I differentiate all of them. I'll spoil it a little bit and say that I generally refer to George Lazenby as the forgotten Bond. I think I have to come up with a new adjective for George Lazenby because officially Barry Nelson is the forgotten Bond. So I'd like to say for the last toast of the night, fellas, to the forgotten
Cheers.
Bond, Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson.
To Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson.
Cheers.
Oh, what an asshole.